Hey everyone, thank you for joining our office hours today. It's great to have you. Today's session will be focused on simplifying the complexities of EMR integrations. I'm Jonathan. I'm a senior solution engineer here at Infinx, and we're joined today by Shreeja, our product manager at Infinx. We're excited to get started.
Hello.
Shreeja, I'll just, oh,
Yeah.
hello,
Sorry.
cut you
Yeah.
off. I'm happy to start with the first question, and we can keep the conversation moving. So why is an integration to an EMR useful if the data is already up to date in the EMR?
Okay. So basically, why integrate, right? Like we already have everything that we need to initiate a prior authorization in the EMR as soon as we like schedule a patient, right? So think of it more like a extension of your, prior authorization workflow. So the whole Infinix platform is like an extension of it. So as soon as you schedule a patient, you have all the information needed. With integration, you have like real-time information transfer into the system. So basically, you're skipping the whole process of adding the same information that's already existing in your EMR into the portal. You have to like manually add in all the patient details, the physician details. So you're skipping this whole part of manually having to enter all of this information twice. Not only this, but if you feel like you have to update something in your EMR, like if you want to update like the patient's member ID or like change the procedure to something else, you don't have to like come back into the Infinix portal or go look for the case, try to edit the case and then save and submit it again. All you have to do is update it in your EMR, and this information will real time flow in to the portal. So this not only like reduces like the delays, but I also think to an extent it eliminates all the human errors that could be involved. But yeah, this is one part of it. But also if you have like a bi-directional integration, which is if you're able to like receive all the information or status updates back to the EMR, it's like immediate access to anything that's happening on the auth, right? Like, so you're always in the know of where in the process of the prior authorization workflow is the order in. So as soon as you have like, we have like an update on if there is any information needed for this particular order, like if you need clinical documents, right? We would automatically tell you that, okay, this is needed. And all you have to do is update it on the EMR. You have to upload a document or like, add some information. And that is all. It will just flow into us and we can easily pass it on to the payer. And yeah, so more of like the streamlining workflow, I feel like not just like a time saver, but it like streamlines your workflow, minimizes errors, and also you have like real-time insights, which I feel, improves the efficiency there. So,
Yeah, that's actually a great point. You know, our portal doesn't have to cause a redundancy on their end. If it's already in the EMR, we're pulling that data, and their EMR is ultimately the source of truth.
yeah, yeah. So
That's
it's
awesome.
all in one place. You don't have to constantly keep switching between different portals or platforms and try to like track something and then update it back in your EMR. You don't have to like go through all of this. You just have every information you need on your EMR.
Awesome. Well, that actually begs the second question. What are typical integrations with these EMRs? Like what different kinds of integrations are there, technically speaking?
Yeah, we do have a couple of types of integrations, we can support, but I think the most common one is an HL7 messaging integration, which is a basic electronic message transfer with all the health information between applications, right? So we support different kinds of order messages, appointment messages. As soon as like anything is scheduled, like you can have that trigger into the system. So these messages are mostly used to like create, update, or like cancel anything cases. And we then have API integration. So Infinix on our end, we have our own specific set of APIs that the EMRs can use to like send in information, update any information, or if they want to like receive a set of status updates, you can use our APIs to like get updates on that specific order. But for some reason, if if the EMR cannot support using our Infinix's APIs, we can always use the EMR APIs. Like if they have their own set of APIs, we can like use the APIs to go grab information, like and send back information back into the EMR. So the one thing about APIs is it's real time, but with HL7, it could be sometimes near real time and not very like, on spot. So
Like a
yeah,
couple seconds.
yeah. So with APIs, it's also easier to like send over and receive documents. So it's more scalable, yeah, compared to HL7. And then we have the X12 plus 278 messaging. Then we have the the Fire messaging, which is like a next generation upgraded version of HL7 standard messaging. So they also like support sending and receiving documents in a much more compatible manner than compared to HL7. And it's basically designed to be more adaptable by different applications. So these are the integration types.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. What are some challenges when integrating with these technologies, and what options do we have to, overcome those challenges?
Yeah, I feel like sometimes, with the standard integration specifications, EMRs don't always, expose a lot of mandatory information that's needed to create an authorization. Like it could be the procedure or the diagnosis, or it could just be clinical documents, which we need to like initiate a prior authorization, right? And so this is one of the challenges. Sometimes like EMRs don't, allow us to like send information back, like auth details back into so like their standard specification, they resist some of this back and forth sometimes, so that could be a challenge. And when we have like missing information, a part of the mandatory information that is needed, if part of it is missing, we can do like a partial integration and do like a manual for adding the remaining details. But sometimes we also have other options. So when AMRs completely resist integrations, right? Like not either bidirectional or like a one-way direct integration. What we can do is we can build, we do a robotic automation process where we build bots to like go extract all the data or the information needed for a prior authorization from the EMR screens and then add it onto our Infinix screens to just automate the whole completely, like ignore the whole manual process, right? We just have everything that we need can be grabbed on and then like updated onto our Infinix portal. So this will like reduce all the manual effort. But even if this is not possible, then we have an option called bulk upload, where all the information you need for a prior authorization can be like downloaded from your EMR onto a file in a standard format. And then like it can be any number of cases, and then you can upload this whole file onto our Infinix portal, right? And as soon as you upload this whole file, it's like a batch upload of all the cases and everything will get created. So if integration is a problem, then we have these other options. But yeah, we are committed to reducing all the manual workload. So we try to like keep our communication with all the EMR providers open and try to see if we can like, explore enhancements around having access to like more APIs and as much as possible. So.
Well, that's great. And I think, because our industry has dozens and dozens of EMR systems, I think being able to have flexibility in what kind of solution we offer for integration is key. So it really speaks to the expertise of our team to be able to say, okay, if yours is a closed system, let's try a different approach. If yours is an industry standard, let's use the industry standard approach. So that's really cool. I appreciate that.
We can always like look for options to like try to reduce the manual workload as much as possible.
Certainly. Yeah. Yeah. The RPA thing is really cool to me because it really shows our dev team's capabilities. Because it's one thing to just be able to copy and paste code. It's another thing to customize code based on EMR's needs.
For sure.
So that's very impressive.
Yeah, we can also use RPA to like capture clinical documents. So we just, if the EMR, we cannot have that sent over to any of the integration, we can always just use an RPA to capture just documents and add it to our portal. So it can be very specific to different workflows and the needs and, the compatibility and of the EMR.
That's awesome. Very cool. The nerd in me gets really excited hearing all that. So another question is, what kind of data is required to initiate those cases into our system?
So to initiate a prior auth with any payer, so the basic information we would need is like patient demographics, which is patient first name, last name, their date of birth, and their gender. And then we would need a physician and facility information, which is the facility name, the physician name, their NPI details, their address, and sometimes we would need like the fax and TIN IDs of and then we would need the service information, right? Like what is the procedure, what is the diagnosis, and when is this going to happen? So what is the date of service on this procedure? And then obviously we need the insurance details. So who is the payer and what type of insurance is it? Is it like a primary insurance? Is it secondary? And then we would need the member ID of this insurance. And we would also need is like the supporting documents for this specific order. What document, any clinical documents that would support this order for the prior authorization. So basically, this is the set of information we would need to initiate a prior auth with any payer.
Do we support multiple insurance types, multiple procedure types?
We do. We have clients who can send us multiple procedure codes for the same order. We also support like primary, secondary insurance, and we do up to 4 insurances. We can get you auths for like up to 4 insurances, and we can accommodate as many procedure codes for an order.
That's great. I like that it can be housed in one case. It keeps everything centralized. And if we're gathering the documentation, it also keeps that documentation attached to the case. Because I've seen in previous ventures, sometimes it's hard to keep track of sensitive materials and documents because you're either emailing it, drag or dropping it into a random folder somewhere. So to be able to tie it directly to the case, I think is very useful and really helps us in terms of our compliance and making sure everything's backed by our security, to also give peace of mind for the client. So very cool, very cool. I did want to address go ahead.
I was gonna say we also like support sending multiple diagnosis codes too. So yeah.
Awesome. I did want to address the audience. If you do have any questions, feel free to add any questions in the chat. Even if we can't get to it by the end of the session, we're happy to either send a follow-up email or a follow-up session would be useful. So we always appreciate your feedback. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that. Another question we have here is, can integrations be customized or are they all standardized? You spoke a little bit to this with the RPA. I guess the question is better rooted with, can we do a combination of, FHIR, for example, and bulk upload, or should they be separated and that kind of thing?
We can. So every integration, we do have a standard set of specification, like a spec for all, like HL7, we have a standard spec. We do have like standard APIs, but we can always customize based on, whatever fits into the unique workflow of the user and whatever aligns with the EMR capabilities, right? So we can, like how I said, with the challenges we see, sometimes only partial integration is possible. So for the other part, we can like mix and we can do like RPA for something, like if you can send us all the information needed through an integration, but you just can't send documents, right? We can do like bots for that. So we can customize it to fit like every unique workflow of the user. But yeah, and we can also, another interesting thing is we can define what the triggers would be, right? Like we can define at what point during the scheduling process do you want to like send this out to Infinx, or at what point do you want us to like receive the information, right? This can again be customized based on workflows. And then we can do, but when we are sending information back into the EMR, we can always, the user can decide on what status updates do they want to receive. Do you want to see every time a case is initiated? Do you want to see every time there's something missing? Or do you want to see like every part, every step of the workflow? Or do you just want to see like, oh, I just want to know when there is a final update on the case. I do not want any of this. So you can like pick and choose what statuses you want to see and, details like that too. So all of these are customizable to an extent to like fit into everyone's workflows. But yeah, but we also do have like a standard integration spec saying that, oh, if you just want to follow the standard one, you can also do that. Yeah.
So when you say the word triggers, could you simplify that for a non-technical person?
Yeah. So when I say triggers, it is more like an order is created in the system, right? Like, so is that when you want us to receive the message? At what point do you want the message to be sent over to the Infinix portal? So that would be a trigger, right? So do you want it when you have an order created? Do you want it when status is in a schedule or something, So this will again depend on workflow to workflow as to what the EMRs have or what the users want to see it as.
So we're not only customizing our technical workflow, we're also customizing the needs of the client's workflow. So
Yeah.
what's relevant to them and their internal workflow, and how can we adapt to that based on their needs?
Of course, yes. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's very helpful. How and where in an EMR is information sent back from the Infinix product? I guess that kind of adds to the need for customization because EMRs are so different. Like how can we determine like where in their EMR that we're placing that data?
So this again depends on the workflow, right? So how we send it back, we have, like I mentioned, API webhooks. We have HL7 outbounds that go with information back into the EMRs. Then we have like X12 or the 278 messages. But basically where the client wants to like see, where the customer wants to see this information depends on their workflow as to like what do they want to see it in specific fields. We do have the capability to send it back and also like depends if the EMR has the capability to receive it in that specific location, right? So we can send that back, or if not, we can just like send all of the information as a note or a comment back into the EMR as well. So depending on where the user wants to see this information, we can always send it back, but we send back details, like we send back auth details, we send back the effective dates, what the status of the auth is it like no auth required, is it approved, and yeah, so we can just send it back to wherever in the EMR the auth details need to be seen. Like it can be field specific or it can just be like a whole note or a comment.
Got it. So for the finalized statuses, that makes sense. But what if like pending information, for example, we need more information from the client? How does that work with transferring that status to their EMR or pushing that status?
So sometimes what we do is we have our set of statuses, and if we say pending information, and then we move it into like, oh, information requested from the provider, right? So when we send this back, if the EMRs have like their set of statuses, we can like map it to them. They can have it mapped to whatever they want to see it as their status. So they can like information requested maybe, or like, something like that on their end. So we can always do like a status mapping with our statuses and then the EMR statuses, and then they can have it displayed in that specific order too.
Got it.
So yeah.
Got it. So just because we have a set of statuses doesn't mean it has to be that exact,
Correct.
convention for them. We can customize those statuses too. That's really helpful. I know in a lot of calls I've had, patient notes is a really big deal to people. I'm curious to know like how we can, are there limitations to being able to comment on the notes in their EMR, and how can they read those notes? I know I'd say that's probably one of the top three things that's mentioned on all my calls is patient notes.
So when you say notes, it's just like the notes field, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like data that we would want to communicate to them that may sit in a case, is it possible to get that into the patient's actual notes? That way they can, they don't have to jump to our portal to get that information.
Yeah. So we do through all the integrations, they support a field where we can send back the notes. And all we have to do is, so we have like a specific field where we add like all the notes on our system on the Infinix portal, and this can easily be sent over through the integration, and then we just have to like map it to in the EMR, in the field section in the EMR, wherever they want to see it specifically. So as soon as we add it here, it will like trigger, I mean, it will like send a message back into the EMR and it'll display under their notes section. So
Okay.
and everything, we can also do a bidirectional. So everything that's added there will also
Hmm.
come into our system. So it becomes easier to like communicate. And if you want some information, you can just add it here. And if you find out that the member ID is invalid, we can always like add a note, and then that can go back. And like they can update it on their EMR saying, oh, this is the correct member ID, and just update the member ID in the EMR, and that will also flow into us. So it makes it easier to like, for the work to like communicate better and
That's
without any
awesome. Yeah,
delays.
that's great. And then do we have capabilities of communicating outside of patient notes? So like if someone needs an update on where things are at, do we integrate that into our system too with communications?
So on our portal, we do have something called messaging where they can come in and type, and our users will see it and update back information on the IP, on our IP Infinix portal. But if not, I think statuses and messaging is like a good way to communicate.
Yeah, because ultimately their main concern is the status. What's the status of this case? That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, and we do
Yeah,
have like for every status, we have like, we have like reasons to why it is in the status. So if there's something needed, we'll tell you that this is the reason it is in the status. If it is, what information is missing, what information is needed. So we send back all of these details too. So
are there scenarios when a user needs to sign into our portal, or can we have everything updated from their EMR depending on the EMR?
So ideally, like in a very seamless integration, if everything's possible in a bidirectional integration, they do not have to like come onto our portal at all.
That's
Because we
great.
will at any given point, we can like update you what is the status of the authorization, where, and all of that too. So you can always have it mapped to your EMR statuses and then just like track it from there.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's important because what I find is a lot of people, because they spend so much time in their EMRs, they don't want to have another step they have to do for a lot of things. And, especially with dealing with a lot of that manual data entry, to have to enter it in two places, I think is a deal breaker for a lot of people. So I think it's so important that we have those capabilities to do either a live or close to live feed because it really reduces the time people are having to spend hopping onto different portals, including our own.
Yeah.
And then they can just really focus on making sure the data is up to date in the EMR and then ultimately getting back to the patients because that's what's important in the end. How do we
Right.
streamline this process so I can get back to my patients?
Yeah, so I think one good way to like start this is understanding the workflow and identifying at what point during the scheduling process do you have all of the information needed for a prior authorization available in the EMR, right? That would be a good place to start with thinking of what could be the trigger to send this message to. So do you have all the information needed? Then like, that could be your, okay, now we can send this message to Infinix, right? At figuring out at what point during your scheduling process do you have all of this information, and then like figuring out, I think, what would be the statuses you would want to see back in the EMR, like update back to the EMR so that you can like streamline your workflow. You do not want to see like every single step of the process too sometimes, right? You might just want to see only when there is some information needed or some action is required from you, right? So you can like customized to this. So I feel like understanding more of the workflow and identifying what is really needed for you to see in the EMR would be a good way to like think of, streamlining the workflow.
It's the age old it depends because with
Yeah.
customization it always depends on the kind of EMR, the kind of technology for integration, what the ultimate goal is for status updates. So that's great. We do have a question in chat. Is your analytics data visible in a client's EMR?
In the client's EMR, not as of today, but we do have like a separate analytics portal on our end where you can just see all the analytics on our portal, but not in
That's
the client.
great.
Yeah, EMR.
Is that data available for export, or does it sit in our system?
We do have it in our system. We can also export it and into documents and then review it too. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I think it's so important. Ultimately, it's the client's data, so being able to not feel like we're holding on to it to be able to freely. Yeah, that's great. We have another question. Do you see EMR integration critical for adoption by clients' patient access staff to leverage our technology?
Sorry, can you say that again? So
yeah. Do you see EMR integration critical for adoption by clients' patient access staff to leverage our technology?
Yeah, I think integration is pretty critical because we would want to see all of this information in the system, right? Like and we are just like skipping the whole like manually adding a lot of information. And this also like reduces a lot of delays. I feel like what you have to schedule, then come back and update, like add all of these details into the portal. So this is a lot. There's like a lag here. It's not like real-time data transfer. I feel like to skip this whole process, integration is pretty critical.
Yeah, that's understandable. I think what ends up happening a lot of times is people are so used to their daily workflow that sometimes change is challenging, and I think the more we're able to simplify that process, it will drive the adoption of more up-to-date technologies. But I think it's a hurdle if it's harder to do that adoption. So I think simplifying is super important.
Yeah, I feel like with integration, it's not really changing your workflow in the EMR too, right? All you have to do is just use your EMR the way you do it. And maybe like if you have to like add a few additional information in different fields, that would be like a slight change in the workflow. But majorly it's just using your EMR as it is. But in the back end, we are just receiving all the information. So it's like a mirror of your EMR on our portal, right? Whatever information you have there will also be available to us to initiate the auth. So that is how we see it. Like it's more of an extension of your prior auth workflow.
That's great. I think we can finish with this last question in chat. So we did touch upon the different technologies, but they're curious about the differences. So what's the difference between HL7 and API and bots? What is better and why? So could you just briefly touch on the various types of technologies and why one's better than the other?
Yeah, so HL7 is it's a very common one also because it's been in the industry for such a long time and a lot of healthcare companies use this. And I think we have like a lot of HL7 integrations too. But like I said, APIs over HL7, APIs are more security-wise, they are better and they're more scalable. So if you have any specific custom needs, APIs fit better in this aspect. And it's easier to like receive and send documents through APIs again. And APIs are real time, whereas HL7 is like near real time. And APIs are more compatible with a lot more applications too. So,
well, it's like you said, if API is going to be helpful, but then we can also customize anything that the API can't do.
Yeah, it's very scalable. So, if you have any specific custom requirements, it's easier to like have it done through APIs. So it's also implementation is a little faster. So we would prefer APIs over HL7. But I know like a lot of EMRs have the capability of HL7 messaging over APIs, and they prefer that. We support that too. But one common thing I see with HL7 is sometimes you cannot send over clinical documents. So for this process, like, we would either have to go and use a bot for this. So we use bots majorly when none of the integrations are possible. right? Or if we have to do like a partial integration and then like use bots to go grab the other information that's not accessible through the through the HL7 or API integrations. So that is when bots come into place majorly. So, but if not, we would prefer still the HL7 APIs and then the bots.
That's great. I think that's a great way to end it. Shreeja, I really appreciate your time. You're obviously an expert in the field. And to our audience, we appreciate you listening. And this will also be recorded and available to share in the future. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Yeah.